It started slow as in the waters, uncertain of what would come next. But the kiss quickly deepened, as if our desires could no longer be held back. The heat between us intensified, and we gave in to the passion that had been quietly building for so long. My hands moved instinctively to her waist, pulling her closer, while her fingers tangled in my hair, her touch urgent, needed. The world around us disappeared. Time slowed down, the space between us shrinking until it felt like there was nothing but the two of us lost in the intensity of that moment. I knew it was wrong. I knew we were crossing a line that, once crossed, we could never return from. But even as the rational part of my mind screamed for me to stop, to pull away, I couldn't. I didn't want to stop. As the kiss deepened, my mind raced with conflicting thoughts and emotions. I knew this was dangerous, knew that we were playing with fire, but there was also a part of me, a part one couldn't ignore that didn't care. A part of me that had wanted this for so long, longer than I was willing to admit even to myself. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, our faces only inches apart, the weight of what had just happened settled heavily in me. Her eyes were dark, filled with something intense that I couldn't quite name. At that moment, I realized that nothing would ever be the same between us. I've wanted this for so long, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, her breath warm against my skin. And I know you have too. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The truth was too overwhelming, too raw. It was too much for me to process at that moment. Instead, I just nodded, my heart racing in my chest as the gravity of what we had just done sank in. But even then, I knew this wasn't over. The kiss, that one singular moment of surrender, had only been the beginning. There would be more. There would always be more. After that night, everything between us changed. Every time I saw Sophie, I couldn't look at her the same way. Each time our eyes met, a rush of heat coursed through my veins, reminding me of what we had done, and of the unspoken promise that there was more to come. The air in the house felt thick, charged with something dangerous, something we both understood but dared not acknowledge openly. Days passed in strained, uncomfortable silence. I did my best to keep my distance, but it was impossible to avoid her entirely. Every touch, every passing glance, felt like a spark, a reminder of the tension that simmered just beneath the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. I knew what we were doing wasn't right. I knew this was dangerous, but there was an undeniable pull between us, something magnetic and inescapable. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't ignore it. One afternoon, when Mark was out again, the silence in the house felt unbearable. I was pacing the living room, trying to distract myself by flicking through the channels on TV, but my mind kept drifting back to her, the memory of that kiss, the feel of her lips against mine, the way my heart had raced in that instant. It was all too much. I hated myself for thinking about it, but no matter how hard I tried to push it away, I couldn't stop. Just when I thought I might lose my mind, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned around and found Sophie standing in the doorway, her face unwrinkled. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with everything we hadn't said yet, everything that hung between us, unspoken but understood. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and hesitant, almost reluctant. I nodded, knowing this conversation was inevitable, even if I wasn't ready for it. "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight in my throat. "We do." She sat down on the couch with a long sigh, and I followed, sitting across from her, keeping a careful distance. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. I didn't know where to begin, didn't know what to say to make any of this better, to undo what had already been done. "I know things have been different," she started, her hands folded tightly in her lap, "and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. That's the last thing I want." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, this isn't normal, right? We're not supposed to feel this way." Sophie looked down at her hands, her expression troubled. "I know," she said softly, "but it's not something we can just ignore either. Can we?" I didn't have an answer for her. The truth was, I didn't know what we were supposed to do. Everything about this felt wrong. But at the same time, there was a part of me that didn't want it to stop. I couldn't explain it, couldn't rationalize it, but the feelings were there, undeniable and real. She shifted slightly on the couch, leaning forward as if to close the space between us. I think about that night all the time, she confessed, her voice barely audible. I can't stop thinking about it. My breath hitched in my throat. I wanted to tell her that I thought about it too, that it haunted me every moment of every day, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded, my heart pounding against my chest. There was a long silence, the weight of everything we weren't saying hanging heavily between us. I could feel the tension building again, that same dangerous pull that had led us here in the first place. And then, before I could stop myself, I said, I think about it too. The words slipped from my mouth before I could stop them, and once they were spoken, there was no taking them back. Sophie's eyes met mine, and at that moment, I knew there was no going back. We had crossed the line, and now we were standing on the edge of something even more dangerous. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. She didn't say anything at first, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was a heat there, a need that mirrored my own, and it terrified me. But at the same time, it thrilled me in a way that I couldn't deny. We can't keep doing this, I said, my voice shaky, unsure. Though even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Sophie's gaze didn't waver. I know, she whispered, almost tenderly, but we're already here, aren't we? The room felt smaller, the air thicker with the weight of our unspoken desire. I wanted to run, wanted to put as much distance between us as I could, but I couldn't move. I was trapped, not by her, but by my desires. The pull between us was too strong, too overwhelming to resist. Before I could make a move, she leaned in closer, her face inches from mine. I could feel her breath on my skin, soft and warm, and my heart raced uncontrollably in my chest. For a brief, fleeting moment, I thought I might be able to stop it, pull away, and end this madness before it went any further. But then her lips were on mine again, and all rational thought fled. The kiss wasn't tentative this time. It wasn't uncertain. It was full of the tension we had both been holding back for so long, the desire we couldn't ignore any longer. I kissed her back, my hands gripping the couch beneath me as if holding on to something, anything, that could keep me grounded. This kiss wasn't about love, about affection, about tenderness. It was about need, raw, primal need. A need that neither of us could control, no matter how much we tried to fight it. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind a blur. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were